Hello guys, today I'll be doing a CD collection video for 4 bands, those bands being Genesis, Pink Floyd, Rush, and Yes. So due to a certain band that's in this video, this might be a long video for me, we'll see, but we're going to go ahead and start off with Genesis with their album From Genesis to Revelation. Out of all the bands here, this is probably the band that has the weakest debut, at least what I'd say, at least in my opinion. But the album has some of their most forgettable material, in my opinion. Again, not a bad album, but has some decent moments here and there. Where the Sour Turns to Sweet is probably the best song on the album, at least for me. That's a decent song, but the album, again, in general, is definitely one of their weakest albums and not a good representation of what they're all about. But next we got the album Trespass, Nursery Crime, Foxtrot, which is definitely one of their best and one of my personal favorites. Probably my favorite of the Peter Gabriel era. Then we got Selling England by the Pound, another album that's one of their best. Then we got The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is actually not one of my favorites from the band. I know it's a fan favorite. Some people even say it's their best. It's actually closer to the bottom. I know I'm going to get heat for that, but I don't know. The album just doesn't grab me or doesn't really hit me as much as their other albums. Now it's not their worst. It's definitely not their worst. You'll know what album that is later. But, yeah, this album, I like it, but I don't love it. But, yeah, I'd say their weakest album is either the debut, From Genesis to Revelation, or the last album. Then we got A Trick of the Tail, one of my favorites from the band, and one of the best of the Phil Collins era. Wind and Wuthering, which has some underrated stuff on it. And then there were 3. Duke. Abacab, which is an album that I enjoy actually. Self-titled. Invisible Touch, which I'll admit is one of my favorites from the band. I know, since that's one of the more commercial albums, or maybe their most commercial, I might get heat for that, because I know there are some people that just prefer the Peter stuff, but I like both eras, both Phil and the Peter era, and I think Invisible Touch is a pretty strong album. Sure, it's definitely of its time, but either way, I still think it's a strong album. But anyways, the next album, we got We Can't Dance. I'll be honest, maybe my least favorite of the Phil era. Maybe, because there's a lot of songs on this album that just don't do much for me, or they're just kind of average to me. But No Son of Mine is on this album, and I think that's a really strong song. And then the final album here, Calling All Stations. I'm sorry, it's not a good album. I try to give it a fair chance. I just can't get into it. The title track is actually decent. I kind of like it. I think Ray sounds decent in that track. One of the better performances from him on the album. And you know, Congo, I think it's a catchy song. It doesn't feel like Genesis, but it's alright. It's not bad. And then The Dividing Line. Musically, not bad. Kind of interesting. But outside of Congo, I think the other singles are pretty bad. It's just not Genesis, and it just doesn't work. And a lot of the album to me is kind of boring and forgettable. But anyways, that's it for Genesis. Let's go ahead and move on to Pink Floyd. The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. A Saucer Full of Secrets. A potential unpopular opinion. Not one of my favorites from the band. I don't know if it's at least one of my least favorites. Maybe it's more towards the middle. I don't know, but it's never been one of my personal favorites. But it's not bad, though. More. Probably one of my least favorites from the band. Umaguma, another least favorite from the band too. Adam Heartmother, which I think is kind of underrated. Metal. Obscured by Clouds, which is actually one of my personal favorites. I know the album usually towards maybe the middle or towards the bottom for many people in terms of ranking the albums from this band, but I think this album, again, is kind of underrated. I really like this one. Dark Side of the Moon, of course, a classic. Wish You Were Here. Animals. The Wall. The Final Cut. A Momentary Lapse of Reason. And I've seen some hate for this album. Some people say it's too 80s sounding, or they just don't like that it doesn't have Roger Waters. I like the album. Not their best, but also not their worst either. Division Bell, which honestly, not the biggest fan of this album, to be honest, but I do like Take It Back, though. That's a good song. And finally, Endless River, which definitely lacks replay value, but it's not bad, though. And the song on the album that has lyrics in it, Louder Than Words, I think that's a decent song. I like that one. Especially the vocal performance, actually. Alright, that's it for Pink Floyd. Let's go ahead and move on to the band that's going to make this video potentially really long. That band being Rush. We got a lot of Rush CDs here. One of the bands where I have the most, maybe the band where I have the most CDs from, either them or Metallica, but let's go ahead and dive into this. Self-titled, and all of these are original CDs, I believe. Fly By Night. Caress of Steel. 2112. Oh, and of course I do have some anniversary stuff too. Like this one here, 2112 anniversary. Farewell to Kings, which is my favorite of their 70s work. I'm actually one of the few people that actually likes it more than 2112. And don't get me wrong, I like 2112. That's my second favorite of their 70s work, but I find myself being more gripped by Farewell to Kings, or I find myself enjoying that album more in general, I guess. Then we got a Farewell to Kings anniversary. Hemispheres. Hemispheres anniversary. Permanent Waves. Permanent Waves anniversary. Moving Pictures, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. Now, this album is turning 40. If I got the number of years right, but I haven't heard anything about any anniversary packs or CDs or anything like that, or how they're going to celebrate the anniversary of this album, because the album came out in February and we're already past the halfway mark of January. So, man, yeah, we haven't heard anything yet from the band or anything. So I hope they do something special for the anniversary of this album, especially if they're going to do a CD. I'm definitely going to pre-order that. But next, we got Signals, which was the second album that I ever heard from Rush, actually. Moving Pictures was the first album I heard from them. Then I checked out Signals. Then we got Grace Under Pressure. Power Windows, which is one of their most underrated albums in my opinion. Hold Your Fire, which I think is kind of overhated. I enjoy this album, even if it sounds maybe a bit dated, at least with some of the songs. And I don't think Taishan is that bad. Sure, one of the weakest songs, but I don't think it's that bad. Presto. I actually like Hold Your Fire more than Presto, to be honest, but Presto has some decent stuff on it. Show Don't Tell probably being the best song on the album. Got Chronicles. Roll the Bones. Counterparts. Test for Echo. Some people put that album at the bottom when it comes to ranking their albums. Either that album or Hold Your Fire, but I don't think Test for Echo is a bad album. I like that album. And then we got Retrospective 1, Retrospective 2, Vapor Trails, Vapor Trails Remixed, Spirit of Radio, Feedback, Gold, Snakes and Arrows, Working Men, Retrospective 3, which took light years to get in the mail, by the way. And then we got Time Stand Still, The Collection, Icon, Icon 2, and finally Clockwork Angels. That's it for Rush. Let's go ahead and move on to Yes. And I don't have all the Yes albums. In my opinion, Yes has many albums that I just really can't get into. Mainly specifically the stuff after the 80s. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. The Yes album. Fragile. Close to the Edge. Relayer. Going for the One. Drama, which I think is one of their most underrated albums. I like this album. 90125. And finally, the last album here, Big Generator, which I think was their last good album. Now, out of all the bands here, Yes is probably my least favorite, but I do like Yes, though. I mean, there's no denying the greatness of their 70s and work, and I think their 80s work is solid, too. I know some people don't like Big Generator, but I like that album. It has some enjoyable tracks. But from the album Union and on, I just can't get into it. Except for a few songs here and there. I mean, with Union, I like 3 or 4 songs. I think Lift Me Up is an excellent song all around. I would have waited forever if I got the song title right, which is the album opener. I think that song is okay too. And then you have Talk, I believe. Can't get into that album. That album does nothing for me, but I think the album after that one's even worse. Close Your Eyes, or no, not Close Your Eyes, Open Your Eyes. Hands down one of their weakest albums, maybe their worst. Really boring and forgettable album, and they try to go a bit more commercial on that album, and it just doesn't work. It didn't work for me. Then you had The Ladder, which is one of the better albums of the later stuff, but at the same time, an album that I can't really fully get into. But it does have some decent stuff, though. It does have like 2 or 3 decent songs that I like. Then you had Magnification, which, I don't know, maybe one day I'll give that album another chance, but as of now, I can't get into it. Kind of a boring album for me, and not very memorable. And then you had Fly From Here, which is one of my least favorites from the band, actually. I'm just not a big fan of the vocals on that album, and the songs overall just don't grab me very much. And then you had Heaven and Earth, which was very for me. Just didn't leave much of an impression on me. But anyways, these are my collections for these bands. Let me know your thoughts on my collection. Do you have any of these CDs? Are you a fan of these bands? And all that good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe. Have a nice day, and take care.